Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel, Going Places with Abu Micah. In this video, I'm going to talk about when you should use an immigration representative for your application to move to Canada, whether on as a temporary resident or as a permanent resident. It's a very legitimate concern for a lot of people because of how the industry has been flooded with scammers and people who take advantage of your lack of knowledge of immigration processes and programs. So I will talk about firstly why people use immigration consultants to begin with, and then look at some case use scenarios. Now, you want to find out about that? Do stay tuned. Now, in my own little research into this, and also talking to a lot of people who have used consultants and representatives of different, of different kinds, I discovered one thing, okay? And it's really a no-brainer, but it helps us to get some insight into this matter. Now, firstly, why do people use immigration representatives? For the most part, it's because that's how a lot of people get to know about the different immigration programs that different countries have. For the most part, it starts with somebody alerting you to an opportunity, or it can be somebody who is in the business of recruiting, or in the business of consulting people for immigration, right? So that's how, for the most part, we get to know about these things. And even if you're the kind of person who takes the initiative and looks for information by yourself, you're not gonna know how the immigration system of Canada works, okay? First of all, maybe even if you do like a Google search for Migrate to Canada, you'll find a lot of immigration consultants, lawyers, web pages coming up, free eligibility assessment. And you go there and you think maybe that's how you get to Canada. You have to use a representative, you have to use a lawyer or things like that. So the government of Canada has done a pretty good job of putting information out there, but then a lot of people may not know, right? Not a lot of governments have done that, right? If you want to look for information on how to move to to Egypt, right? I mean, where are you likely to find credible information about that, right? You may not know offhand what sort of, how people move to Egypt, or how people move to Australia or New Zealand or Poland or the UK, right? Each country has got its own immigration system and its own immigration processes and programs. And these may differ from the next country. So that's how people end up using agents, because they sort of like put themselves in front, right? They highly optimize themselves on search engines and things like that. So, but let me just say something here. For Canada, I want to make this video as short as possible. For Canada, you don't need, there are countries where you need somebody to make an application for you. Like, I lived in the UAE for the greater part of 4 years, and there's no way, okay, I mean, there is a way, but generally, for the most part, if you want to visit the UAE, you need a sponsor. If you want to work in the UAE, you need a sponsor, right? So sometimes people then make judgment shortcuts and say, okay, maybe it's the same in Canada, maybe it's the same in the UK, maybe it's the same in the US, right? So in Canada, you don't need a representative for an immigration application, but there are some cases or instances where you might need to use one, or where it will be wise for you to use one, okay? Now, generally, there are two kinds of visas that you can get for Canada. The first class are what are called immigrant visas. So an immigrant visa is a visa that facilitates your entry into Canada to stay here permanently, okay? And then non-immigrant visas are visas that allow you to enter Canada or stay in Canada for a limited period of time. So you're applying for a visitor visa, that's non-immigrant. You're applying for a work permit. A work permit does not give you the right to stay in Canada permanently. Okay, it only gives you the right to, or the permission to work in a particular job or for a particular employer, right? So that's that's that. That's so work permits, study permits, all of those are non-immigrant visas, and those ones, you will be required, right? Or rather, you will be required to prove that you will leave Canada, okay, or that you have got ties outside Canada to sort of like guarantee that you have got a place to go back to, so that you don't end up staying in the country illegally. That's a big issue for IRCC. They don't want people staying in the country beyond the expiry of their visas. So they want you to prove that you will leave Canada when your visa expires. Now, that becomes something that's difficult to prove, right? Now, when you're applying for visas, when you're applying like for things like permanent residency under economic immigration streams like express entry, provincial nomination programs, the processing of such applications is very objective. Right? When you're applying for express entry, you can almost be sure you're going to get approved. Why? Because the requirements are very clear, and the requirements are very clear, and you as long as you tick all the boxes, then there's no reason why IRCC will refuse your application. If you meet all the requirements, then hey, you will get your permanent residence. So your IELTS scores are undisputable. Your educational credential assessment, it's undisputable. No one can dispute that. Your medical results, no one can dispute them, right? So, and those are some of the things, right? Your police clearance certificates, no one can dispute them. If you don't have a clear, if you have a clear criminal record from country X, you have a clear criminal record from country X, right? And so that's how economic immigration programs are assessed. It's very objective. You don't need a lawyer, a consultant, an agent to do that for you, right? If you do use one, it's mainly just to save yourself some time and effort, but it's not going to give you any advantage. So I used a consultant. Well, why? Because I didn't know how easy it was to do it by myself, right? But it also saved me time and effort because I was working very, very hectic schedules in the UAE. Now, the next thing are the non-immigrant visas I talked about. So with non-immigrant visas, there's a very subjective element in the processing of those ones, because you have to prove intent. You have to prove ties to your home country. Those are very subjective. I may feel that I am so attached to Zimbabwe because I am living with my grandmother, or I am living with my mother or my uncle or whatever, and I wouldn't want to leave them, and move to Canada permanently, right? But then the government of Canada may look at it differently. They may look at things like property ties as stronger than family ties, or So it's very subjective. You can be denied a visa despite having strong ties. Why? Because you cannot prove, you cannot argue, you cannot present a case. This is where lawyers come in, because that's their job. Their job is to say, hey, they examine evidence, they put forward arguments, right? So lawyers can help you to create to make a case where your application is a bit complicated, because you are required to prove things that are very subjective in their nature, right? So that's an instance where or those situations are situations where I would say use a lawyer, right? Well, you are required to prove certain things. You are required to do, and lawyers can make representations for you in a court or before an immigration and refugee board, something like that, right? And they can help to prepare a case in the event that maybe like your visa application was refused and you feel that the immigration officer's decision was not fair. There are certain things they may not have considered. So that's where you can engage immigration lawyers. And I always recommend if you need to use a representative, if you need to use a lawyer, use one who is either in Canada or rather, and or somebody who is IRCC registered, right? ICCRC registered. Okay, I'll put a link in the description so that you can visit the website for yourself. Always use a regulated Canadian immigration consultant if you need to use one. Always use a lawyer who's registered in Canada if you need to use one. Okay, so that's what I can say about using immigration representatives. If there is something that you feel I have left out, please drop a comment. I would love to hear from you. And if you like this video, hey, give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications so that you don't miss out when I upload the next video. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.